Bienvenido al campus de Lords. Conoce a la gente. Atrapa el espíritu de Lords.
Hello, we are the Franklins. My name is Cedric, and this is my beautiful wife, Brenda. And we are so honored to be here at Voices Latinos. And we have to talk about who we are for a minute. And we are the founders of Kingdom Resource Management. And our focus right now is to bring marriages together. We're going to have a program coming up called The Joy of Marriage. We just want to enhance people's marriages and just make them better, because a better marriage makes a better family, and a better family makes a better community. Wouldn't you agree to that?
Today I'm going to talk about the Virtuous Woman. And because it is National Women's Month, I think of three individuals who are very notable in my life, who've made a great impact in my life. And the three of them, the first one was my grandmother, Elizabeth Drumright, my mother, Rebecca Baltimore, and my sister, Dr. Yanni Fowler. All three of them exhibited and exemplified the virtuous woman, because a virtuous woman in Proverbs 31 talks about who can find a virtuous wife. They are worth far more than rubies, any type of jewels, because they show strength, valor, and they esteem their husband. Their children call them blessed. Well, my grandmother grew up and was born in the South, as was my mother. And when I think about a few things about my grandmother, I think about the things that she endured as she was growing up and as she was married. She was a domestic worker in the South, and some of the things that brought her to who she became as a strong Christian woman. I remember her telling me as a teenager the story about her youngest son. He was 15 years old, and he was on his way to a choir rehearsal. He was falsely accused of looking into another woman's window, and because of that, the people that accused him murdered him. They hung him on a tree. And when my grandmother was notified of it, they took her to that exact site to see her 15-year-old hanging from a tree. And she asked the people that she worked for, who were very prominent people in the town that she was living in, to help her find an attorney to fight this issue. But at that time, this was during the 1940s, they told her they couldn't do that. And I believe it was because since they were prominent people, they probably felt that there was going to be some type of retaliation to their family. But my grandmother did not become bitter. It made her even stronger. And I see the things that she taught us, and she lived with my mother and father, my sister and I, until we were 14 years of age. She had a garden. She cooked for us. She was actually a caretaker for my mother and my father, for my sister and I, as my parents worked during the day. And so she always was a serving person. She was a giving person. She lived on she had meager belongings or earnings, but she was always giving down to her last penny. And I just believe that she passed down that spirit of giving and that spirit of serving to my mother, and then my mother passed it down to my sister and I. My mother, Rebecca Baltimore, she was always volunteering, she was serving, she was doing many things and giving, just as my grandmother did. And I remember when I was 8 years old, my mother took me to a home where she was taking a basket of food to a family. And like I said, I was 8 years old, and when I walked into the home, I could just smell it was a strong foul odor in the home. Everything was in disarray. There were 3 little children running around. There was food, rotten food all over. And all I could think of at that time was how grateful how grateful I was to be a part of the family that God put me and placed me in at that time. And I really truly believe that because of that and because of my mother's giving and serving just brought me and took me into the field of social work that I did for over 26 years. My mother was always telling us to speak positive, to think positive, to have hope, and to never worry about the cares of the world or where our food was coming from, our clothes were coming from, because she believed in the Word of God, as did my grandmother, who was a very strong Christian, both of them. And as I go on to speak about my sister, Dr. Yanni Fowler, I really admire her because she went back to school after her children were older, and she earned her bachelor's degree. Then she went on to earn her master's degree, and then she went on to earn her doctorate degree in biblical studies or biblical counseling. And she did all of this while she was working alongside her husband. They owned their own business for aerospace, and she has just the same type of spirit that my grandmother and my mother has, that of giving and giving from the heart. She's blessed me many times, but as I said, I truly believe that I went into social work because of all of these things, and I just honor all those, my grandmother and my mother and my sister. And I like to say this because there are many women who are notable, and many times they don't even, people notoriety, as many people do, because of what they do. But it doesn't matter, because their family, their children, and most of all, God knows what they're doing when they're giving and when they're serving. And I just am so happy to be here today. I'm glad that and honored, as my husband said, to be on this television show. And thank you very much for inviting us.
And I want to just share with my wife that she is a virtuous woman herself. She didn't mention that she was a virtuous woman, but I know that for a fact. In fact, that's what drew me to her. When I first met my wife and I got introduced to her family, her grandmother was like my great-grandmother. In fact, they kind of even looked alike, and they reminded me so much of each other. And I got to see how her grandmother was. She always called me son, and she would say, "Son, come here now." And she had her ways of doing things that were right, and you couldn't move her from doing that. And so I saw her being a virtuous woman. I saw her mother's life, and I saw her sister's life. And then I said, that's the kind of wife I want. It's in her blood. So thank you for the opportunity again to be with Voices Latinos. And we just had a great opportunity, and we want to thank Marjorie Rios for having us. And if you ever want to contact us, our information, you can see is on the screen. And just give us a call, follow up, and we'll gather the information, and we hope that we can help you in some way. Thank you again.